And we have liftoff. Yes, finally, it actually works. This is awesome. So I hope my followers will forgive me. So let's just wait until we get a few people popping on here.
Forgive you for having me on?
Yeah, forgive you for having you on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. All right. That should be out there. Just wait until I get some clicks. See people.
So this is live streaming?
Hey, hold on. I'll find it. Great. This is great. Okay. I've got Rhea there. I've got Trevor Colt. Yes. Have you spoken to Trevor?
No,
Tim?
but I've seen you speak to Trevor.
Yeah, Trevor's awesome. Good pick and sound. I know, right? Different location. Right. I've moved a bit just because I was getting a lot of traffic in the other room. So, all right. Who's there? Hey, Christina. Is that Christina? How you doing? You know, let's wait. Let's see if we get some more people on before we get into this. Hello again, Christopher. You guys are very, very patient. I've actually been, I was working with the streaming software to get it to work, and there's still a bit of a lag, but you guys are getting right. So, all right, how many we got here? Say hello if you're on here.
I'm here.
I need to stop getting attractive men on my show. You see that, Tim? You get it. I was telling Tim that he's actually got like Kamala Harris earrings on. So I don't know who's talking to him in his ear. You know, it might be President Obama.
It's Kamala. Kamala and I are directly connected.
Kamala.
Yep.
Kamala. Trevor, Tim is the person I said when you come over, we can go up and visit him in Montana because he's up in God's country right now in Montana.
Yes, he is.
Which is, there you go, the one and only Tim Clemente. Yes. So, all right, you know what? We've got a few people on, so let's get into it. So I'm going to talk to you guys first a wee bit about first how myself and Tim got to meet. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Tim?
You want me to bring it up?
Yeah, and a bit about your history. Tell people a little bit about your history.
Do I talk about my regrets for having met you, or the positive aspects despite?
I'm an actor. Just talk about the positive bits. I don't want to hear the negative bits.
Okay. Yeah, we met. I think we met about 15 years ago, maybe a little longer. And sadly, we became fast friends and have been since. We've been in a competition for child rearing. We're tied right now at 9 kids. Mm-hmm. I think I'm out of the race, but my progeny continues because I have about a half dozen grandchildren at this point, and you have none. So I think I have none. I'm winning that race. You've only been married for 19 years. I've been married for 38. So I got you 2-1 there this year.
Which, by the way, talking about 38, we'll talk about 38 in a minute, but go on.
Sure. So we met through a mutual buddy, a lawyer, a Catholic lawyer that was in Hollywood. And he introduced us. We were like in a diner, I think, and just chit-chatted for probably a couple hours and found that we had a lot in common. We were both in a foreign war zone at the time. It's known as Hollywood. And I had recently come from a foreign war zone known as Iraq, and moved on to another war zone in Hollywood. And we're both trying to fight the culture war in Hollywood because everything, politics, art, everything is downstream of entertainment today. It didn't always occur in that way, but it does now, that everything is downstream of entertainment and media, I should say.
Yeah.
And so you and I both were jumping in headlong into that battle because our culture is worth saving, and we were trying to do everything we could to save it through art, entertainment, and media, which I think are the most important things in the battle today, because we're having the problems with politics today and assassination attempts on presidential candidates and character assassinations on lots of different people involved in politics and outside of politics, because art, entertainment, media have misdirected a good percentage of the population to feel that one side is evil and they are good. And it's a terrible war we're involved in now. And unfortunately, I think it's escalating almost to a civil war at this point.
Yeah, I know you knew me. You can speak to my cancellation in Hollywood, actually, because you knew me before I was pretty much canceled by Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real. It's really real. And as you said, our friend Andrew Breitbart said, God rest his soul, he said that politics is downstream from culture. So we can talk about that in a little bit more depth. We'll refer to the...
Matt, let me stop you there at your cancellation, because I had a video conference call with a very renowned writer of feature films. And I don't want to say his name because I don't want to out him here, but we were talking about a future project that we were going to work on together. And he had read an article in a magazine featuring myself and my brother that was written a few years ago. I think it was either Vulture magazine or the New Yorker. Actually, both of them published this article, and it explained the differences between my brother and I. We're basically polar opposites, and so I was outed as a conservative, and I didn't mind being outed. But I don't know how it's affected my career to this point. But this other writer said, because he had read that article and knew that I was conservative, he basically whispered to me, "I'm a conservative, and I'm terrified of if that ever got out, what it would do to my career." And he said, I can't talk about politics. I can't let it be revealed what I believe, who I will vote for, because I know my career will end instantly. And that's an indictment on the situation in Hollywood. And it's an indication that what happened to you, and it has happened to so many others, is continuing to happen. And it's a terrible thing. And you just said politics is downstream of culture. This is politics entering into a realm it shouldn't be in. Your politics are yours. You go into the voting booth, you're Matthew Marsden casting that ballot as a U.S. citizen that's come from a foreign country and loves America and wants to be here and wants to vote and do everything you can to promote the values that made America great. And the fact that you want to do that means people actually hate you. People here in America, and they want to cancel you.
It's really bizarre to me. And I think that what is happening right now, like I was like the canary in the coal mine back then. It happened to people in Hollywood because, I keep telling people now, like whatever you've seen in Hollywood that's bad, we're like 5 years behind. Right. So all that stuff is going to come out. They're trying to change desperately fast, but they can't do it. They're trying to be quick about it, but you can't put that genie back in the bottle because they're so far ahead in pre-production and development and all that. So really what we're seeing now with everybody, everybody is in that position that they could lose their jobs because of their political affiliation, but it only ever works one way, which, we are in a banana republic without a doubt. You cannot express your views, even if it's like, hey, listen, we still love people. We just might disagree with them on things. You can't do that anymore. That is completely gone. And I think one of the reasons why I keep going on, and the people who are on here know because they're here and they subscribe to me, is, and you can talk to this, Tim, is it's so important that you support those that have similar values to you, because these people are going out there and others watch the numbers. It's really important to note they watch the numbers, because the powers that be look and they say, okay, how engaged are you? Right? How engaged are you in the culture? Are you willing to go out like the people did in the UK, which is, I still cannot believe that they're getting arrested for what they did for memes. And it's crazy. But don't think that that's not going to come here, right? Because it is, and they've indicated that it is. But, you have strength in numbers. I keep saying this. It's like the lions are looking for the straggler out the herd, right? So they can go and pounce on them. But if the herd stays together, and we turn around and we say, listen, we're in this, right? It doesn't mean, you're not going to cancel Matt Marsden because we're going to support him. And guess what? All those people then will come and support Tim Clemente or Trevor Colt or, all these other people that we know that we can vouch for personally and back them. It's super important.
Matt, that was a perfect analogy. I saw a video just last week. I live about an hour from Yellowstone National Park, which is renowned for its wildlife. You go there any day of the year, and you're going to see huge herds of bison and elk and grizzly bears, wolves, all kinds of wildlife. And I saw a video last week where a small elk was being stalked by some wolves and grizzly bears at the same time, and it ran into the herd, and the herd turned into this molding mesh of brown fur. They were constantly exchanging who was on the inside and who was on the outside of the herd, and as they were running, they were constantly mixing it up so that it would be much harder for the wolf and the grizzlies to be able to pick out that weak elk they had been after, that small weak elk. And now it's mixed among 1,000 other elk, and they're constantly, it was an incredible thing to watch, and it was a defense mechanism that they used to protect the weakest in the herd. And we don't do that. We don't do that, unfortunately, especially not our side of the political aisle. We're individualists. So, you and I both drive pickup trucks, which means self-sufficiency. You drive a pickup truck so that there's nothing you can't do when you got to do it. And that self-sufficiency kind of separates us from others like us. We're all individuals, and we believe that the individual should be treated as an individual. And so we don't have that herd mentality that the left has. The left rallies around. I mean, you see that with Kamala Harris. Here's a woman that didn't receive a single vote in a primary, was the least favored candidate in the last election in 2020 when she ran in the primary for the presidency or for the nomination of the Democratic Party. And now she's basically just coronated and put in place, and yet everybody rallies around her. And then on the Republican side, you see the Lincoln Project. The Lincoln Project overtly hates Trump. They have come out and said that repeatedly over the last couple of campaigns, and now they're overtly supporting Kamala Harris. Well, they're called the Lincoln Project because they're allegedly a Republican organization. They're not, and they never have been. But that's an indication that the disparity within the Republican side is great, whereas the unity on the Democrat side is very strong.
Yeah, I've said this a number of times on this channel that rugged individualism is great, but there's no individuals in a foxhole, and we have to understand what is going on right now. We are in a very, very bad situation, and I want to get onto this. I want to get into the Trump assassination attempt, but before we go there, because I could talk with you about, I mean, you guys, you got to understand that Tim is probably the most interesting man in the world. So firstly, Tim was he's an accomplished screenwriter. He was a cop in St. Louis, Missouri, which used to be called The Bloody Third, which we have a movie together that we will be making soon. That is the movie I've told you guys about, that if there was ever a movie to be made, it is that one. And we have an A-list director and a potential A-list giant actor on the hook for it. But again, if I was on the left, if me and Tim were on the left, we'd get like $5 million like that from George Soros and we go and make the movie. But we don't. So again, this is why, we build up the subs, we build up the people just so we can communicate and get the message out. So then if we were to do, say, a crowdfunding, then you guys would all know about it. And this isn't one of your Mickey Mouse movies or terrible movies that nobody really wants to see but supports because they think it's the right thing. Anyway, so Tim went from being a cop to joining the FBI, was on the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, partnered with a guy that has killed more terrorists than probably any other army unit or any unit in the world. That story is incredible. He also spoke about his brother, Tim's brother, Jim, was one of the guys that caught the Unabomber. So that's a whole fascinating story as well. So, yeah, and then I could tell you, Tim could tell you some amazing stories about what he experienced as a writer in Hollywood, which is really, really funny. And I'll leave that to him to talk about. But so just to give you some kind of an idea, the unit that Tim was in, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, if you guys have seen the movie The Kingdom, that was his unit, right? That was his unit. In any terrorist activity around the world, Tim was deployed there. So Tim was deployed. I'll let you say all the places that you were deployed, Tim, and then we'll get into, because I want to establish your credentials just for all the naysayers, and then we'll get into what has gone wrong and what is happening in the country. So off you go.
Okay. Yeah, well, the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, there were actually a few around the country, and so the world was divided up among these primary major FBI offices to handle responsibility for those areas. So I didn't have the whole world. I had the Middle East, Africa, and most of Europe. So those were our areas' responsibility. And then there was like the New York field office had the former Soviet republics, northern Scandinavia and Russia. And then Miami division handled Central and South America. The LA division handled most of Asia. So that's basically how the world was broken up. There might have been smaller microcosms of FBI influence in other places too. But so we had the hot spots: Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. That's where almost everything happens. So beginning in 1998, the U.S. embassies were bombed in East Africa, in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And so our squad, we deployed on that immediately. The night of the bombing, we were on a CIA plane flying halfway around the world to go work those crime scenes and do those investigations. When the USS Cole was blown up in Aden, Yemen, on October 12th of 2000, I was on the first. It's called a FEST flight, Federal Emergency Support Team flight, overseas with FBI, CIA, and other State Department and other personnel to handle not only the investigation but security and any other follow-on things. I deployed to Sarajevo, Bosnia for an assassination there, and worked throughout Europe in a lot of the good Western countries for limited periods of time. And then obviously the Iraq war kicked off. That became a big counterterrorism effort because soon after Saddam Hussein went underground into his spider hole, he invited Al-Qaeda in, and Al-Qaeda became the primary force that was fighting what was at that time transitioning from a war to a counterinsurgency. And so we went over there. I spent several months in 2004, early in the war, and did 2 deployments then. And then I actually retired early from the FBI, took an early delayed retirement in 2007 to work directly with the Department of Defense in uniform again in Iraq for most of that year. And all of those deployments, I worked with the individual you mentioned that was my Iraqi partner and became the top terrorist hunter in the world. He was incredible. He had great situational awareness and knowledge of everything happening in Iraq, and was just an incredible asset, not only to myself and the FBI, but to the entire counterterrorism forces of the world. And he is and has been the most elite terror hunter there's ever been. There's never been another person like him, and very few counterterrorism units around the world had the success he had as an individual. So,
and I've met him. I've met him. Let me just say, and there's a story that one day will come out about what he did, and it's one of the most heroic things you can. And by the way, I just want to make this clear to people that think that when we talk about these things, especially as conservatives, that we're in some way racist or anti-Islam. And Tim always calls this individual his brother, and he's a Muslim, and they fought side by side. So that is, don't let people define you. And anyway, I'll let you carry on. I just want to give a shout out to everyone on this thread. I want to thank you for putting your questions out there. I will ask Tim that question, Atomic Wire, when he gets through this. All right. So sorry, carry on, Tim.
Yeah. So my Iraqi buddy, he's a Sunni Muslim. And I have hundreds of Muslim friends around the world from working in all these places, Bosnia, working in East Africa, heavily Muslim populated countries, working in Somalia. So it's not a question of, do I hate anybody because of their faith? No, there are aspects of Islam I completely disagree with. I'm a practicing Catholic, and I can't in good conscience promote their religion, but I don't say that any Muslim person is a terrible person because of their faith. It's ridiculous to think that. There are a lot of great people, and he's the quintessential example of a good human being doing the right thing for the world, not just for himself, his family, or his country. He was doing what was right to quash Al-Qaeda and other radical Islamist terrorist groups while he was a practicing Muslim.
And so if people knew, Tim, if people knew what he did, and I know a lot of what he did, it is just heroism that is beyond the pale. Like, I mean, this
Yeah.
guy. If you were to make, I hate to say it like this, but if you were to make a movie about him and you made him like a white American, like it would be the greatest role that anyone would
Yeah.
ever want to take. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is incredible.
Yeah, and he's not a guy that looks like Stallone or
No.
Schwarzenegger, just kind of an average looking guy, a little bit stocky, bulky, but fearless in every way. I can't tell you how many days I met with him where he had been shot at or bombed that day, the day before, the week before. He spent multiple months in hospitals in Iraq in a coma after multiple attacks, being shot. I think he was shot while I was over there with him. He was shot at least 4 separate times and at least 9 bullets. You know, the average person can't even relate to the fact that you get shot one time and you go back, but he would get shot and be back that afternoon.
And you know, I think that we need him on the Trump details. So let's let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk firstly. Let's talk about the first one because you know that was like a year ago, right? Like that's how it feels. Yeah. Like so. Firstly, I want to talk about the technical aspects because you know you've been in this situation. You know, we spoke about this years ago because when you I got to watch what I say because I don't know if it should be said, but you know we were talking about the routes in Washington, D.C., because you're in the Washington field office and how they're covered. And you've worked hand in hand with the Secret Service. You worked hand in hand with, like you say, the agency and all that. But firstly, I do want to clarify this because the first thing that the reaction now, which is really sad, is the FBI, they're all corrupt, right? That is people's immediate reaction right now. They're like, I don't trust them. You know, they're bad people. They're in the pocket. Can you talk about that a little bit first before we move forward? Because even when I've gone on, by the way, for you guys that don't know, Tim was actually at the Pentagon, got to the Pentagon after it was hit with a plane on 9/11. And we get into it a lot with, I've got into it a lot on September the 11th, unfortunately, with people that are like, it wasn't a plane. And I'm like, Tim is godfather to one of my children, right? So he's obviously, I trust him implicitly. And I know that he's a man of good character, else he wouldn't be the godfather to my daughter. So can you just talk about that a little bit, about why the FBI now is not considered to be trustworthy?
Well, you know, Matt, there's over 12,000 FBI agents, I think is the current number. And we've had that number for quite some time. And you see a handful of horrendous individuals at the top of the FBI, some at the middle management of the FBI, and some street level agents. Like, you know, I saw a video yesterday of a couple of goofball agents that went to visit a guy because of a social media post. And he basically chased them away with a video camera, you know, with his cell phone. And so those guys, you know, I obviously communicate with a lot of former and current FBI agents. I'm on a on a text thread with 3 or 4 other former FBI agents, all very renowned. You know, a couple of them. And so we text constantly. We sometimes 100 texts a day about what's going on. And, you know, when that video came out yesterday with the 2 goofballs, and I call them goofballs because, you know, I was an FBI agent and I'd go to the office in the morning, say goodbye to my wife and kids, and could end up in Africa or the Middle East that evening. It happened multiple times. And why was I deploying somewhere? Because some horrible incident happened that had to be investigated or something needed to be prevented. I was sent halfway around the world a few times because we were expecting attacks and we wanted to have a capability forward deployed so that we could either prevent something like that from happening or be ready to react to it. And that's what I did as an FBI agent. I didn't knock on anybody's door in the United States because somebody said something mean on Twitter or TikTok or something else. And I have no idea what these guys were investigating, what kind of things on social media they were looking into. But if it was something bad, go to a prosecutor, get an arrest warrant for that horrible, heinous crime that they've committed, and go and arrest that person. If it doesn't rise to that level, shut up, sit down behind your computer and find something better to do. Because that's embarrassing. And I don't know if that's something that's directed from the top of the FBI, or these individual agents, new agents, are investigating these things of their own whim. I don't know, but I cannot possibly conceive of a reason why you would knock on anybody's door to ask them about a social media post. I can't think of it, unless and only if it was a direct threat to the president of the United States or some high-level official, which is a federal crime, a direct threat. I'm going to kill President Trump tomorrow at 2:00 at this rally. Okay, well, that's a threat. And that threat can be acted on because there are laws against that type of thing for obvious reasons. But you see that, and you see the Peter Strzok's and the other individuals, the Andy McCabe's from the Russia hoax, and all the other individuals at the top of the FBI, James Comey becoming so politicized, sending his official notes to a reporter. Those are the property of the FBI. And let me tell you how bad that is. So you mentioned I'm a writer. I write in Hollywood. I've written, 8 or 10 TV episodes that have been produced, maybe more than that. Several pilots that I was paid to write by especially the network CBS. I've written and sold a few feature scripts. Every word I write, every word, before it can be published in any way, has to go through what's called pre-publication review. So when I came into the FBI, my first day in the FBI, sitting down at the FBI Academy, I had to fill out a horde of paperwork that the FBI gives to you. And it's about your pension, it's about your future, it's about your security clearance, because the FBI is a unique agency. You start out on day one, the day you are hired as a special agent trainee in the academy, a new agent trainee, you're already given a top secret national security clearance. You're already given a lifestyle polygraph, and that's given to you because you're actually at top secret SCI, special compartmented information, the day you come into the FBI. We're the only agency that has that, the only agency. And other agencies, you can rise to that level to get a clearance. Everybody in the FBI has to get it when they start. So that first day, in order to get that clearance granted to you, where you're given your credentials and you have top secret SCI clearance, you sign away a lot of your rights. And one of those rights is the right to publish. So I do not have the right to publish anything. I am not allowed to. The FBI can grant me on an individual basis the right to publish something, but it has to be approved by the FBI. And so every script I wrote for CBS television on the show The Unit, for Fox on Lie to Me, on NCIS Los Angeles, I can't remember the other shows, but those scripts have to be sent by me to the FBI prior to final approval of the script by the studio and a network. And so I have to send the script, the FBI reads it, and they read through it to make sure there's nothing that I'm revealing that's of a concern to the FBI, either based on current investigations, past investigations that still may be ongoing, or a national security threat that I may unravel because of my writing. And so even a fictional script, my brother and I wrote a pilot, and it was totally fictionalized. It wasn't based on any real accounts. We had to submit it to the FBI for approval, and the FBI immediately within days sent back red lines saying, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about this, and you can't talk about this. You have to remove those from the script. And it was fictional. We had invented something, but apparently that invented thing was invented by the FBI and was being used, and so we couldn't discuss it. And so that's me, a low-level street FBI agent. Now imagine you're the director of the FBI having private, personal conversations with the president of the United States that you work for. And you take those notes and you give them to a journalist. I would have lost my security clearance that day and been in handcuffs by that night.
I was saying you'd have been in jail. Agent. You would have been in jail, wouldn't you? Without a shadow of a doubt.
But the security clearance would have been gone instantaneously. My access to everything, my computer access, everything would have been shut off that instant. And then I believe by that evening, there would have been charges leveled against me for something like that. And rightfully so, I signed away those rights. So James Comey signed away those rights too, when he became the director of the FBI. But he obviously ignored the fact that he did that. And was he prosecuted? No. And so when people see that, they obviously see what's before their eyes, recognize what's before their eyes, and then assume that's the entire FBI. It's not. It's really not. There's thousands of great agents who work very hard for our national security, for the security of their communities, and they do great work. Unfortunately, the bumbleheads, the idiots, the imbeciles, the DEI hires, the political appointees, the swamp dwellers that are in the federal government are also in the FBI, and they cause it great harm, and they cause great consternation to the good agents. And so I think as a whole, the FBI needs to be revamped. I think that upper management needs to be eliminated immediately. And I think that a lot of the recent hires, especially, need to find other careers. Maybe
But
some
you
of them
said,
should be
Tim,
selling.
you said to me, though, this has been going on for some time. I remember a story
Yeah.
you were telling me. Do you remember about the woman in St. Louis, Missouri, who got promoted to a detective like super fast, like way faster than she should have, and she hadn't even gone through the process. I mean, this is a major problem, and people wonder why we have lapses in security. Like we've just seen, and
No,
why people.
Matt,
Sorry, go on.
pause there for a sec, because what you just said, you're talking about a problem that exists everywhere in government, and especially in law enforcement today. And it's why I think it's the explanation of why we've seen so many horrible things happening with law enforcement. Cops in the UK, cops that are arresting people for social media posts. And we look at that and we're like, what? And then we see yesterday this video of FBI agents knocking on a guy's door about social media posts. What that guy did was the right thing, cursing them out, chasing them away, put their tails between their legs and run away. But the problem is that it's a vocation. Law enforcement is a vocation. It's to me like becoming a priest or becoming, anything like that. It's like a vocation.
It used to be
becoming
doctor, right? Like a doctor used to be a vocation.
Used to be. Yeah. Now it's just a job. Law enforcement now is just a job. And it shouldn't be, because it's all I ever wanted to do since first grade. It's all I can remember ever saying I was going to be was a cop. And I don't imagine there's a lot of kids today that have that dream. And it's sad. And I think a lot of people that are now in the FBI, that are now in police departments, that are now in the Secret Service, go to a job fair. I'm looking for a job. Oh, they're hiring. And they say, oh, we're looking for people just like you. Well, why are you looking for me? Because if, Secret Service, if Tim Clemente is applying to the Secret Service, I'm 5'8", about 180 pounds. I'm in decent shape. I couldn't be protecting Donald Trump. I shouldn't be protecting Donald Trump. I should not be on his detail. Even if I was 30 years younger and in phenomenal shape, I was an expert marksman in every weapon system the FBI had. And I could take down targets. I was a sniper on the SWAT team. I was a great handgun shooter. Doesn't matter. I don't have the physicality to be around a protectee like Donald Trump. I don't. And a lot of the people we saw on was July 13th and on September 15th don't have that physicality.
The women shouldn't have been there. The women shouldn't have been there. I mean,
absolutely not.
It's as simple as that. They're not.
The process for selecting an agent to be on a detail for a 6'2", 240, 260 pound, 280 pound man, whatever Trump is, should look like the NFL Combine. It should be like
Carson Ulrich. Carson Ulrich should be the guy. And you can tell these guys who Carson is, actually, but he's like 6'5", 230 pounds. And that guy shot a guy in Afghanistan at 1,500 yards with an AR-10.
At a full sprint. The guy was at a full sprint.
And he went, bang, and dropped him. Like, even the Navy SEALs that were glassing him at the time went, whoa! So he's the kind of guy. And it's just a reality.
And he's physically intimidating. A 5'3" woman, I don't care if she is an expert marksman. I don't care if she's carrying military ordnance with her and she can drop aerial attacks on potential attackers like that ass hat on the roof in Butler. It doesn't matter, because she has to be able to physically use her body as a shield for the President of the United States. She also has to be able to pick up the President of the United States should he be injured or disabled or immobile and move him off the X to a protective location where they can then get him away. She wasn't capable of doing that. And most of the people around him that day in Butler were not capable of doing that. So they should not be in that position. So that's a hiring practice that's been abolished. The hiring practice of getting the biggest, the best, the brightest, the smartest, the strongest to be on those details, and instead getting a diverse looking crowd of people around a protectee. You know, if I was the protectee, I don't care if they look like me or look like Dwayne Johnson. I want people that can protect me and keep me and the people around me safe. Because if you have guys that don't deserve to be there, guys or gals that don't deserve to be there, and are incapable of doing the job, you end up with the situation that happened at Butler and the situation that happened on Sunday. It's just, you got to pick the best people for the job. And unfortunately, merit has been thrown out. And no longer do any entities, especially federal agencies, hire based on merit and capability.
Well, look, Tim, problem. I mean, optics matter, right? Like, so if you would have watched the Pennsylvania shooting, and then you saw that FBI agent. Now, I'm going to tell you guys this because I've actually trained with Tim. I've trained with Carson. I've trained with some of the CAG guys. I've trained with some of the SEALs. And one of the things you do as an actor trying to portray these guys properly is you have to have good weapons handling, right? You have to be able to, for example, transition. You're saying transition, right, from a pistol to a rifle, right? You should be able to bring your weapon up to bear. I ran that drill with Tim and Carson hundreds and hundreds of times. And when you see a Secret Service agent going, and they can't holster their weapon, clearly they're not trained well enough, because it should be muscle memory, right? It should be something. This is why, you know this, Tim, because Tim has worked with the Delta guys. Even on the FBI, I mean, the Delta guys are just, as Tim will tell you, they're just another level altogether. But they do thousands and thousands of drills just taking their weapon up, just pulling their weapon out, reholstering it, bringing it up, dry firing, dry fire. So it's second nature to them. So if you're a bad guy and you're watching that go down, you go, well, I'm going to have a shot at that, right? Because they're clearly not dialed in, right? And it used to be, and this is one of the things with Trump, why we had so much peace in his presidency, not domestically, but in wars, is because he said, I am going to annihilate you if you touch a hair. You saw that thing about the Taliban. He goes, if you touch the hair on the head, a teeny tiny hair on the head of an American, this is your house and it's gone. And he was serious. He was absolutely serious. And I know this because he's done that in other instances that most people don't know about. So they know he's not joking, right? So even the drawing of the weapon, presenting the weapon correctly and reholstering it was a complete abomination. But Tim, so let's talk about Pennsylvania. So just run through the things that for you thought was strange. Do you think it is, because it's very easy for us to run to conspiracies or conspiracy theories on, oh, look, they didn't have the right detail, this and that, like, or maybe it was at a higher level that we know that it was denied, right? And the way that they were kind of squirming out of that when it was in front of Congress. What were the failures to you as someone who could have been tasked to protect the president?
Well, start from the beginning. The personnel that are assigned to Donald Trump's detail are of a much lower caliber than the personnel assigned to Joe Biden's detail. Joe Biden is the sitting president. The PPD, the Presidential Protection Detail, which is the most elite unit of the Secret Service, handles the sitting president of the United States. There's a limited period of time that they can serve in that capacity. It's like 6 years, maybe something like that, because it's pretty demanding, grueling time-wise and grueling physically. You're constantly going. You have a large cadre of personnel that you can use for that. And then there's ancillary people that will support you on a movement. So say the current president, Joe Biden, if in fact he is still our current president, I don't know. That's been an unverified question that hasn't been answered. If he still is, and he's moving, he's going to Cleveland, Ohio for a speech. So what's going to happen is the Secret Service Protection Detail is going to send an advance guy to Cleveland, Ohio. That advance guy is going to get on the ground and work with local Secret Service from an office in Cleveland or from any regional offices around that might be supporting this event. and also meet with local, state, and federal partners that might be involved in whatever this operation is on the ground in Cleveland. And so they all work together. They do in advance. The advance guy stays there until the team that's protecting the president eventually gets there. And that advance guy may be there weeks in advance, or it may be days in advance, but it's certainly not hours or minutes in advance like we saw on Sunday. On Sunday, the Secret Service had a couple of guys moving a hole or two ahead of the president on the golf course, and one of them saw the attempted assassin with his rifle pointing through the fence, took shots at him. That's very different from what happened in Pennsylvania. It's inadequate, but it's much better than what happened in Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania, we have the situation where there was apparently no direct communication between President Trump's detail and the assets on the ground. And the way it works is it's called concentric circles of protection. You have the immediate circle right around, a very tight circle right around the President of the United States. We saw as they were leaving the stage, that circle of 4 or 5 or 6 individual agents that created a scrum around President Trump to get him off the stage and to the limo to get him out of there. Okay, so that's the innermost circle. Then there's a next ring, concentric ring, and that ring would be other Secret Service agents and Secret Service uniformed division personnel. So those were the guys that I believe you saw in blue, in tactical gear, that came up onto the stage after the shooting happened and were looking outward. That's a counter-assault team. So those are 2 completely different elements with completely different missions. So the inner core looks inward to protect the president. And when I say looks inward, I don't mean physically looking at Trump, but I mean that's all they care about. We care about this one human being and keeping him alive. And so that inward focus means they have to look outward for any threats, but it's about that inner working little chamber that is now forming around the president. Generally, it's a diamond formation, minimal of 4. It can exceed that and go up to dozens, but it's at least a minimum of 4, 1 directly in front, 1 on either side, and 1 behind, all with their hands on the protectee when they have to move that diamond and move him within that diamond. So then you go outside. So you have those uniformed Secret Service guys, the counter-assault team, that are looking outward. They're looking for this threat and other threats. And that's why they have long guns. They're immediately up on their long guns, their M4s or whatever they're carrying, looking around for other threats. And they have their backs to the president. So they're keeping those threats away. They are not concerned at all about the audience around them. There's 5, 10, 15,000 Pennsylvanians in that venue, exterior venue that it was. They're all in that venue, and they are potential targets for a gunman or a would-be assassin. And none of the Secret Service personnel care about them. They can't. That is not their mission. It's not their goal. It's not what they do. What they care about is that protectee, keeping them alive, getting them off the X, getting them out of Dodge. If, in fact, another gunman popped up in that crowd and was firing from within that crowd at President Trump, I'm sure innocent bystanders would have been caught in a crossfire between the Secret Service personnel and that shooter. It's just, it's collateral damage. It's sad, but that's the reality of it. But then you have more and more and larger concentric rings that get looser and looser the further out you go. So when you get out to the 150-yard range, you're now talking about multiple counter sniper teams, 2, 3, 4 counter sniper teams, whatever they had deployed that day. And they're very spread out. And so their mission becomes much more difficult because they're having to look out at over a great distance and cover those wide-ranging areas of responsibility to keep any threats from attacking the president. Obviously, outside that, you then have just law enforcement milling around in the crowd, beyond the crowd, on the ground. And the communication is vital. It's the most important thing in a situation like this, because if you are not communicating with everybody else in every other concentric ring, if all those rings are not connected communications-wise, each one of them is ineffective. So the first big flaw was somebody sees a guy on a roof, then somebody sees the guy on a roof with a gun. Then somebody sees a guy on the roof with a gun crawling towards the precipice of that roof with a vantage point looking towards the president and most important candidate in the race right now at that time. As that's happening, that's being screamed out by eyewitnesses, and they're screaming directly to law enforcement. That law enforcement obviously have police radios or whatever communication form they have, and they're communicating with their own personnel from their own department, which is worthless. That's worthless because their own department isn't handling that protectee that's in a protected zone before his speech and is only brought out into the venue itself and onto that stage when everybody says it's all clear, you're all good. Advanced people are there saying, yeah, it's clear, bring him in. That's the first failure of communication.
And shouldn't there have been someone embedded with them? Shouldn't there have been someone from...
If you have the personnel, yes. But if not, you have radio communications that are connected. That's what should have been done. So I'm going to harken back. You mentioned 9/11. So at the Pentagon, I got there a little over an hour after the plane hit. And one of the things I had to do was protect plane parts that were on the ground because there were people stealing souvenirs from the ground.
What?
Outside the Pentagon. Yeah, it's disgusting, but it happened. Anyway, there were plane parts all over, small parts outside, bigger parts inside the building for obvious reasons. But I got there a little over an hour after. One of the first people on the ground at the Pentagon was a guy named Chris Combs. He was on my squad. He was part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force and National Capital Response Squad. Chris got there, and Chris immediately set up incident command. He was the first federal agent on the ground there. Got there within minutes of the plane hitting. He saw the plane hit, as did thousands of other eyewitnesses, saw the plane flying in, saw the first pass that
it
missed.
nearly hit, right? It nearly hit the...
Well, first it missed the Pentagon on the first pass. They were trying to crash into the northwest side of the Pentagon, and which would have taken out the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I don't know that was the intended target, but they were coming in way too hot and couldn't get the plane down low enough. They were coming over the Potomac River, which is the normal flight path to Reagan National Airport.
Oh.
No, Reagan Airport.
Okay.
And so they're coming down the Potomac, trying to make that turn into the Pentagon, couldn't make the turn, ended up having to pull out. Everybody's saying how amazing it is, all these imbeciles that know nothing about what actually happened, saying how it's incredible that this wannabe pilot that never flew a plane before was so skilled. He was horrible. All he did was take a big projectile and hit the biggest building in the world. Not a very skilled thing to do. He missed on the first pass, did a big loop around, flew directly over a Sheraton hotel in Pentagon City, and came down low. There were hundreds and hundreds of people in that hotel watching this happen. The plane came down, crossed over Interstate 395, which goes directly over the 14th Street Bridge into Washington, D.C. There's a cab driver, a Somali African cab driver, driving his cab. And the plane coming in for the crash, hits a lamppost and crashes it through the windshield of his car. And the plane fuselage almost hits the roof of this cab and comes down so low. So this guy crashes because of the lamppost, and he's looking right at the Pentagon now as the plane comes in, skips off the ground, and goes in. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up, we'll talk more about that if you want to later, but I'm bringing that up because within minutes, Chris Combs, FBI agent, arrives on scene. Chris immediately designates himself the incident commander. And it's something my squad did everywhere in the world we went. We designated an incident commander and we set up an incident command. We do that not only for terrorist attacks, we do that for special events of every variety. It doesn't matter what it is. We set up an incident command. That incident command is so every agency, every entity, every person that's on that scene knows this is where all the decisions are being made. No decision gets made without going through this particular person and this area. And this area becomes bigger and bigger and bigger as the day expands on 9/11. So Chris sets up incident command, FBI vehicle opens up the back, has the radios, has communications with all so FBI SWAT, FBI weapons of mass destruction, FBI evidence response team, all of these personnel that are responding to this huge event are all communicating directly with Chris. Another guy, from Arlington County Fire Department is one of the other first responders that arrives very quickly. Their area of responsibility includes the Pentagon. A guy named Jim Schwartz, assistant chief to the Arlington Fire Department, arrives within seconds and sets up incident command with Chris. So now he is responsible for fire rescue operations. This is a burning building. There are thousands of people inside the building, hundreds of people on the plane. So Chris's responsibility is this is a terrorist attack, but his responsibility becomes subservient to the fire department because the fire department's mission is to save lives. Chris wants to preserve evidence, find the bad guys, execute a prosecution. Jim Schwartz wants to save whoever might be injured or in danger right now in that building. So those are two completely juxtaposed missions. They're very much opposite. But because incident command is set up, Jim gives a radio to Chris. Chris gives a radio to Jim. Jim and Chris's radios go into a box that connect all communications. Arlington Police Department shows up. Virginia State Police shows up. Federal Protective Service shows up. Pentagon Police show up. I don't know if Secret Service showed up. State Department definitely showed up. CIA shows up. All of these agencies show up. They immediately report to Incident Command. Their radios are now all connected. So I can talk to Arlington Fire Department and say, Jim, have you gotten everybody out of this sector? Are there any potential victims in this area? Do you need help? And so that's what happens in any major incident. And that includes.
And this is 24 years ago. This is 23 years ago, right? So it's not like this is something that hasn't been instituted for a long time. It has.
No.
This is the way you do it.
And it wasn't done at the World Trade Center, which is why police NYPD helicopters are circling the towers. They're seeing structural destabilization in the towers. They're seeing beams pop. They're seeing windows blow out on lower floors. And they're realizing the structure itself of the World Trade Center is being destabilized from the fires and the damage done. And they are getting on the radio and telling other NYPD personnel, get out of the towers. The tower is coming down. Get out now. Fire department says, we still have thousands of people above the fire line. We need to get personnel in there and evacuate them. Those two things, two juxtaposed missions, completely opposite each other, are happening at the same time. And they're happening because there's no communication between those two entities. They're not directly communicating. NYPD set up incident command. FDNY set up incident command at two very distinct locations far apart. And they are not communicating. They are not communicating with each other. Fast forward to Butler, Pennsylvania. Police on scene, state police on scene, Secret Service on scene, local SWAT teams on scene, Secret Service Uniform Division, counter assault teams on scene, all communicating separately. Why? I have no answer to that. That's my biggest question. Why are you not communicating? And then you have the local police weeks after the event admitting to, I think, a newscaster that they had no communication at all with the Secret Service Protection Detail that morning, prior to that morning, and on that day at all.
That is insane.
So it's an absolute communication breakdown, and it is what led to everything we saw happen. Absolutely. And so all these vast conspiracies that are swarming around the internet, they're superfluous. There's no need to blame a major, conspiracy on what happened. You have DEI hiring because you have a director of the Secret Service that wants 30% females. So now you have the 5'3" female that can't holster a weapon. And you mentioned transition training. Transition training, for those that don't know, is I might have an AR slung on my body or an MP5 machine gun, and I have my sidearm. And so in a situation like that, maybe I bring my sidearm first because I'm in close movement, and I don't want to have a long gun out because it's very hard to move through a crowd with a long gun and still maintain the capability of using that long gun because anybody can grab the muzzle. It's just you sometimes would immediately go to your sidearm. Now, if I need that long gun, I have to transition. And that transition takes place by, one, holstering my sidearm, and two, bringing my long gun up. And so you saw the guys, the counter assault team coming on stage with their long guns up. They didn't even start with the sidearm. Secret Service, some of those people might have had MP5s or some small concealed submachine gun under their jackets in addition to the sidearm. And so the woman who can't holster with two hands, find that holster with her sidearm, would be absolutely incapable of transitioning if she had a second weapon. She would have had to throw her handgun to the side and bring the long gun up, or try and use both of them. It's
By
a
then she would
ridiculous
have been
situation.
dead, or somebody else would have been.
Absolutely.
You know,
Somebody
in
else
that,
would have been.
yeah, in that situation, you know, the whole point about that is it has to be seamless and fast, so you can bring the weapon to bear on the target. So
Absolutely.
this is something that I've maintained. I think that when you're looking at, you know, was there HSI? I know HSI guys, as you do, good guys, different mission, right? Different mission. I've heard that they were backing them up, but still, you know, there's this catastrophic failure of seeing someone climb up a ladder, get on a roof, and be able to get those shots off. And look, I mean, that sniper did his job, right? Like, he took care of business, and people think that those things are always easy. I mean, look, the 130 yard or 120 yard shot is an easy shot, relatively easy shot, which was his to the president. And again, I just want to finish on this, and then we'll move into what just happened. Why is it? And this is something I think that a lot of people are completely baffled by. Immediately, people started saying he was a Republican. No, there was absolutely, you know, as I say, fake news. It's fake news. They immediately said he was a Republican, and then they just dismissed it like it didn't matter. Like, oh, you know, it only grazed his ear. It didn't even graze his ear. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, yes, you know, what happened on Sunday. It doesn't matter whether he got shots off or not. There's somebody that is in the proximity of the former president of the United States trying to kill him, and it's been normalized. Why is that, Tim? Why?
I have no idea, other than there's a lot of people that wish that Trump had been killed. And I think that comes out in what they're saying, because just the fact that it's been, you know, pigeonholed and we don't hear about it anymore, and it's 2 months later, is a tell. And the sad thing is that those security vulnerabilities, the guy sending a drone up, boom, first clue. No drone should have been in that airspace. The Secret Service can deny airspace to anything at any time. So the Super Bowls used to be just a regular security event, and you'd have some level of security, and then they became what's known as National Special Security Events, NSSEs. And NSSE is something that is run by the Secret Service, generally involves the President of the United States, but not always. And so they can designate an event as a National Special Security Event, which means Secret Service controls everything. So at the Super Bowl, it's an NSSE, whether the president's going to be there or not. And what happens is they shut down the airspace. So a perimeter is established. So within, I don't know if it's a quarter mile or 10 miles of the perimeter of that venue, nobody can fly. Unless, of course, it's an authorized exception. And so even in Washington,
like if Marine
D.C.
One is coming in, is coming in and dropping the president off away.
In Washington, D.C., you have Marine One that lands regularly on the White House lawn. Okay. And that's the big military helicopter that comes from Quantico. The Marine Corps has the best pilots in the world for those choppers. They come in, they land on the White House lawn. Well, they're protected. They're always protected. They're protected by fighter jets that are in the air, but a fighter jet can't fly alongside a helicopter because the jet's too fast moving, the helicopter too slow moving, and the helicopter much lower. So there are fighter jets in the air. But the closest level of protection is what's called Eagle One. And Eagle One is a U.S. Park Police helicopter contingent. They're helicopters that are run by the Park Police, which is a federal police agency, and they are put up in the air in advance of Marine One, behind Marine One, and adjacent to Marine One. And they protect Marine One. And so the U.S. Park Police, why the hell would we want those guys in the air protecting the President of the United States? But it's an agency that has the aerial assets in Washington, D.C., and so they're utilized for that mission. And so they have an exception to this airspace closure that other helicopters. It's why you never see, you watch the news in Los Angeles, every day you're going to see helicopter footage of police chases, things that, because all over Los Angeles, there's helicopters, news helicopters. You don't see that in Washington, D.C., because there's so many closed airspaces. There are some assets that have those, but they're rarely used, and they're rarely used directly over Washington, D.C. because of that limited airspace. And so the Secret Service can designate that at any time. You can't have any assets in the air. I don't care if you're American Airlines or you're this punk, goofball, mentally deranged shooter. You can't have any kind of aerial asset because it's a protected airspace over a protected venue. So the fact that the kid put a drone up, found the vulnerabilities in the Secret Service's protection plan, which was wholly inadequate, and you have sniper teams on the roofs that are, again, looking outward. And yeah, the sniper that took the shot and took out the shooter was a little slow in his response. I would have hoped it would have been a quicker response, but it may have been that he got some radio traffic telling him, look in this direction, look in that direction. It wasn't accurate information, and it wasn't effective information. But the problem is that those snipers have to immediately determine, is that a threat or a good guy? And so because they have no communication with locals, because they have no contact with the local law enforcement, it may have had sniper teams in the air, or excuse me, not in the air, on the rooftops and other elevated targets. But the fact that there's no
that could have been their area of responsibility, right? It's designated. So if that wasn't their area of responsibility,
if it was a police sniper, he should have been looking outward, not looking towards Trump, right? And so, but because they're not communicating, they can't verify that. They can't even get on the radio and say, "Hey, I got a guy with a long gun on that roof. Anybody know who he is?" They can say that to other Secret Service personnel, other PPD. CAT team, counter assault team personnel. They have a limited circle of communication at that point. So they might say, hey, I'm a member of the CAT team. I know all the other guys on the CAT team that I'm deploying with on this mission. So if there's 4 of us or 6 of us or 24 of us, we know each other. We know what our areas of responsibility are. And we know none of us are on that roof, right? What we don't know is who might be on that roof. Because apparently there's sniper teams inside that building. Apparently there are sniper teams in other areas that, again, are not communicating with the Secret Service. And so because that's happening, it led to the entire cascading events that were, this guy gets shots off. This guy eventually gets shot by one of the counter assault team snipers from, I think, about 400, 450 yards. Yeah. So it's a decent shot.
It's a good shot.
Not an impossible shot by any stretch. I'm sure those guys have the capability to go out at least to 1,000 yards with their weaponry and their optics. And so it's a great shot. I mean, hit him right under the eye, went out the back of the head.
Under pressure.
Under extreme pressure. As a sniper, when you have a human target, there's a 2-inch band around the eyes that goes all the way around the head. That's your only target. You don't hit above that. You don't hit below that. You don't hit anywhere else on the body. That's the 2-inch band that immediately disables all motor function of the human body. It's an immediate disconnect between the brain and the body.
Switch, right?
If you hit up higher, you can do brain damage, but the person can still have bodily functions, still be able to pull a trigger, still be able to cause harm. That 2-inch band is it. And so, our sniper qualifications, we had to qualify every month as snipers. It's a paper target with a 2-inch line, and that's it. You hit outside that line at whatever distance you're shooting at, whatever angle that target is turned at, you failed.
Because, Tim, part of this, and I learned this, with the drills that I've done with you guys, is especially with something like room clearance, right? Like when you go into that room, the guy next to you, the guy behind you has his area of responsibility. And if you're going in, and certainly the way we did it when we trained with the Army Rangers, is if you're button hooking and you're going around and you're taking care of the person in the corner, that's the person you're taking care of. And you have to rely on the guy next to you to take whatever his area of responsibility is out, right? So if you're in a situation where you've got a guy that absolutely shouldn't be there, right? Absolutely shouldn't be in the one most obvious place, because that should be locked down. You're looking and you're saying, well, maybe it's one of our guys, right? Maybe it's one of ours, because there's no way that they'd be allowed to be up on top of that roof. Like I said, I think that we have to be careful not to run off into the conspiracy theory area, when actually what is worse is what is going on right now is that we have such low standards. I say it's worse because it's affecting us on every aspect of our lives, whether it's, operating overseas, right? You're operating overseas, and you need to know that your assets are right behind you and they're going to take care of business. And a DEI hire doesn't make it happen, right? Like, you don't have the person because they're either not physically strong enough to get that sniper rifle up to an area, or they can't load fast enough, or they can't pick a guy up and drag him out, right? And we've seen it over and over that they're lowering the standards. And, a lot of people have spoken about this, about the lowering the standards in the Ranger School, to pass Ranger School, because they wanted to do that to get the, oh look, we've got a female Ranger. And I'm not berating those ladies that did that and went through that, but you know as well as I do that the rumors are out there is that those standards were dropped. So let's move now on to, this has happened. So you would think, well, hang on a minute, we've got to do something about this. We cannot let this happen again. And look at what happens. Literally, 2 months later, it happens again. So take me through this, because for me, the first thing that would have been just massively obvious is the guy was meant to be there for 12 hours, right? He was there for 12 hours, in situ, 12 hours, from what I understand. Why weren't they doing laps around where, the perimeter? I mean, that is just basic. I mean, I do that at my kids' football game. You have to walk around the perimeter, make sure there are no dodgy people around. Why aren't they doing that?
That's the big question. So that's part of the advance. Everywhere a protectee goes, an advance has to be done. I worked on the protective detail for the Attorney General of the United States and for the Director of the FBI. And that involved sometimes traveling overseas with them, sometimes traveling domestically with them, attending events with them, all kinds of different things. And everything we did included an advance. An advance isn't just going there and being there. An advance is going there, being there, securing the perimeter of wherever the venue is. And once you secure that perimeter, you then have to hold that perimeter. Okay, so you go there, and if you're going to a golf course, it's tough because it's big. And I worked the President's Cup golf tournament. I handled counterterrorism security for the President's Cup golf tournament. President of the United States is sometimes there. A lot of very important people are there, in addition to the golfers, who are very important. It's a nationally televised, a worldwide televised event. And so we would secure the golf course, and we would have to go there, search the entire golf course, and you're looking for physical threats and personnel who could be a threat. And people are screened that are coming into the viewing areas of the golf course as they're coming in. But once you secure it, you're looking for bombs. Make sure, hey, on the 15th hole, there's not a suitcase sitting by the tee box, or something else that could be a threat. Anything that could be a threat. Every little storage facility is searched and then secured. And by secured, I mean, like if the president's doing the walk down Pennsylvania Boulevard and the inauguration, every manhole on that route, every sewer access is inspected, and then it's secured. And so a steel manhole is inspected. Secret Service agents go in the ground, they look, make sure there's nothing in the sewer, and then they put the cover back on, and then they weld that cover shut. That's how you secure.
They did that when Bill Clinton, I'll never forget this, when Bill Clinton came to Birmingham in the UK, they welded, I remember that. It's funny you said that, they welded the manhole covers down. Can you say manhole cover anymore? Can you say that?
I don't know if you can. Maybe you have to say person hole cover. But I don't know if person hole cover is as good. But
Spirit hole cover.
Yeah. And so you have to secure it, and then you have to hold it. And so an advance has to be done. And so here you have Donald Trump deciding to go to the golf course. If they had sent an advance team, and again, when it happened, the two Secret Service agents are doing an advance. It's technically an advance. They're a hole or two above where Trump is going. So they're ahead of him by, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't know how slow he is, how fast he gets through a hole, but they're several minutes ahead of Donald Trump. And they spot the muzzle of a rifle sticking through the chain link fence. the muzzle of a rifle of a guy that's apparently been there, as you said, for 12 hours, according to cell phone reporting. And so that guy's been sitting there. That tells me no legitimate advance was done other than the agent or two that are moving just ahead of Trump. And it's inadequate, obviously. Obviously, it's inadequate because the guy was able to be there for 12 hours. And the answer would be, well, do you have the personnel? And if you have the personnel, send them. Now, does that mean, hey, the guys that worked last night, they're now off duty. They're not coming on again till tonight. Well, you know what? Pay them time and a half. Get them in here this afternoon. Trump's about to go on the golf course. Give me 6 or 8 extra guys to walk around that course and post, so that your walking is your advance and your posting is your securing of whatever you found in that advance. Because if you don't secure the area, now again, these guys say they were 1 hole ahead of Trump. They get to the 5th hole. Trump is on the 6th hole. The shooter's between 6 and 5. So if they're now on the 5th hole on the green and moving towards I'm saying this backwards. He's on the 5th hole. They're on the 6th hole. And then they go to the 7th hole when he gets to the 6th hole. They have not secured the 6th hole. They've advanced it, but they haven't secured it if they're continually moving. Now, if there's a roving group of a dozen Secret Service agents or whatever personnel they are, they could be Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputies. It doesn't matter. But if they were doing a rolling perimeter, it would have been 2 agents are at hole 6, 2 agents are at hole 7, 2 agents are at hole 8, 2 agents are at hole 5, 2 agents are at hole 4, and they're constantly rotating. So they're keeping a perimeter behind, with, and in front of the president as he's moving through the golf course. That's effective, because then you would send 2 guys 2 holes ahead of the president. They might spot the gunman. They might spot just a guy behind the fence. That's suspicious to them. If they saw that, they should have said, hey, we got an issue here. Take 2 of the guys that are 3 holes ahead or 3 holes behind and move them there, or get the locals there and say, look into this. We're going to hold the president where he is. We're going to look into this. It should have been what was done in Butler. It wasn't done. So instead, what happens in Florida, because you have such a small detail, which is inadequate, they only have 1 or 2 agents ahead. They see this guy, they see the muzzle, and they apparently immediately engage him, which is the right thing to do. They're not saying, hey, could this be a Palm Beach sniper laying in the bushes over here with a rifle pointed towards the protectee? They didn't even bring that question to mind. Apparently, they said, that's a bad guy with bad intentions, and I see the muzzle of a gun. I'm laying some fire down. And they did. Sadly, they didn't hit him, but they at least were
well, let's see now, Tim.
Just reactive.
Tim, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe. I mean, you would think in a just society and not a banana republic, which, let's face it, that is what we live in right now. In a just society, we'll get the news from him. We'll get information, but he might be Epsteined. Who knows? He might be bumped off. But again, so a couple of things there. Firstly, you had the advanced guys, which obviously was effective, and a lot of people saying,
effective would have been the president's never on that golf course with that gunman behind that fence. Right, that's right. Effective.
I'm talking about.
Not adequate, but they did, based on the circumstances, they did what they should have done.
They did their job.
Unfortunately, the protection detail didn't do everything they should have done.
Well, I'm not saying that the securing the area was effective. I was just going to get to that. I'm just saying that, like you said, having those 2 in advance, which to me, guys, and I want everyone on this live stream to think about this right now. Number 1, this is a billionaire. Number 2, it's the former president of the United States, right? The former president of the United States, who could be the future president of the United States. If Donald Trump is killed, there will be civil war in America.
Yep.
So don't tell me you don't have enough money to put a detail out there for the president. You could have got Delta Force in. You could have got Navy SEALs in. You could have got Green Berets in. They've all done this. People like Tim Kennedy will tell you they've all done it in one way, shape, or form, especially when you go overseas and you have... Think about this. There's been, that I know of, no killings of celebrities going to war zones. Just think about that. Think about that for a second, right? They go to war zones. They're literally surrounded by people that want to kill them. And nobody even gets shot at. You've never heard like a George Clooney or Gary, we know, for example, Gary Sinise, who does this all the time. I don't think he's never told me, as he told you, he's been shot at. I don't think so.
Nope.
So he's protected. So how is it that we cannot do this and make it such a priority for an individual that this would change the course of the world? Right, yeah. We've seen it before. Let me just say this to him. Look back. World War I started because someone was assassinated, right? They killed Ferdinand, right? That was the beginning of it all, right? So this is the president, future president, please God, of the United States. And we don't have somebody drive. And going to this, Tim, you know as well as I do, even when you look at if you've got an event at a school, if you've got an event at a hotel, what do? They're constantly walking around the perimeter. There's a constant. So if you walk around and someone has been there, and by the way, guys, I'm sure there's some watching this, right? There's some people watching this, is they can tell, right? If you have it, and Tim, you can talk about the incident where you could tell where someone had laid to take a shot, right?
Yeah, the DC sniper case.
Case.
We found the most critical evidence because I found where he had been laying in the grass, and actually in leaves, he was in a wooded area, and I could see the outline where he had been laying there for at least a little while. So there was a deep impression in the leaves. And then we found the shell casings about 7 or 8 feet away, which you would expect. He took a shot, and the shell casings ejected from the rifle in a particular direction, rearward and to the right. It's typical. And then we found the demand note that he had posted on a tree nearby. So yeah, you could tell. But the thing is that it's not just that you could tell somebody had been there. The guy is still there, and the guy's there the night before. And so I don't expect the golf course to have security that can do a perimeter search to protect and make sure somebody's not stealing the flag from the 17th hole. But it's completely different when you have an agency with thousands of personnel. And so the Secret Service has multiple areas of responsibility. Protecting the President of the United States is one. It's their most important. It's the one they're most known for. And then protecting the Vice President, protecting other protectees, presidential candidates, former presidents. So you have all of these protectees that all come from the most elite aspects of the Secret Service. The rest of the Secret Service is working credit card fraud in Cincinnati, Akron, Dallas, anywhere in the United States. So they're working credit card fraud. They're working different kinds of bank frauds and things like that. So
they're an arm of the Treasury.
Yes. And so because they have multiple jurisdictions that they have to handle. Well, I'm sorry, but a guy that's writing a bad check in
Cleveland,
the urban center of Manhattan, in the financial district of Manhattan, a guy's writing a bad check. It can wait. It can wait. Because if you have a target that has threats from Iran that are overt, has had attempts made in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now in Florida, some of those personnel that maybe should not be on a PPD, should not be directly on the inner circle protecting President Trump, could be outer perimeter security doing advances 24 hours a day for everywhere Trump is going. And I mean, take 100 of them, take 50 of them, take whatever you can. They are personnel that at least have some training. They carry a federal badge, credentials, and a gun. And they have the capability in some capacity to effectuate a more sincere and realistic security perimeter around the former president and a possible hopeful future president of the United States. That capability exists. It's not being utilized. And the question is it a budgetary concern or is it a political concern? Are there people within the Secret Service making decisions that are based solely on their personal politics? Or are they making the decisions, hey, we just don't have the money to get that agent from Cincinnati, that agent from Manhattan down to Florida to protect Trump's golf course? Well, you know what? Go to Congress and say, we need an extra $8,000 this week to fly 2 agents to Florida or 10 agents to Florida. You're not talking billions of dollars. It's not like your weekly donation to President Zelensky. Maybe we should worry a little bit.
That's where I was going to get. That's what I was
maybe you
going to
should worry
say.
a little bit less about the president of a country in Southern Europe or Northern Europe or Western Europe or Eastern Europe or in Asia or anywhere else. Worry a little bit less about the money we're sending to those places and possibly reroute it to protect the possible future and certainly past president of the United States, who has so many threats against him that he's being targeted on a bi-monthly basis now.
I mean, it's unconscionable that we put other people in front of our own people. It is unconscionable. Yeah. I do not understand it. And, if you look at the psychology of it, right, we know they hate him. And what is really sad is you have, and again, I keep telling people on this, and all the people that are listening live, I really, really appreciate every single one of you. This is all about being engaged, right? This is what I keep saying, that you have to get involved because the other side hate you. They absolutely hate you. I wish it wasn't that way. I don't hate them, right? If someone tried to kill, God forbid, Harris or Biden or we'd be outraged, right, Tim? We'd be like, hey, listen, this doesn't happen in America. This is not right. It is not right, and we do not do whatever you can to protect them.
Take it
right?
Take it one step further, Matt. If you saw that shooter behind the fence with the rifle pointed at Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, would you personally put yourself in danger to engage 100%, that person and stop them?
100%. 100%.
As would I.
Yeah.
Now, the sad thing is there are people on the other side that would see that guy
and go
and take a video of him doing it. They would take a video of him doing it and live stream it.
Yeah, this is it's a major moral issue. It's a major spiritual issue actually that we have across the United States, and it's very difficult for me because coming from outside of the United States, seeing what it was coming over at 9/11, which was an incredible time. I remember driving down the streets and just seeing flags everywhere and unity it was really unbelievable. And see how fast things have deteriorated. I think that the combination, I think Obama was absolutely the worst president probably this country's ever had. He has caused so much division, and I think people give him a pass. I think he's probably still pulling the strings now. They give him a pass because, he was charming and he was cool. But if you think about it, race relations, for example, have gone back, 50 years since then. And the rhetoric, and people talk about Trump. Yeah, he's brusque. He says some things that he probably could say better. But, and this is the same thing that happened in the UK, Tim, is that we saw it. Let me just say this. England's being flooded right now, right, with fighting age males, right? And I've had multiple people tell me like, the people that are coming over, they're all fighting age males. That's not a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy theory, right? It's true. They're fighting age males. There's very few children and very few women. Okay, so let's just put a pin in that. And if you say that in the UK, if you highlight that, if you say, hang on a second, why are all these people being given mobile phones? Why are they put up in a hotel? Why blah, 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 blah. Then all of a sudden you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, all this. It's outrageous. The people, the number one most disenfranchised group in the UK are white males. It's just a fact, right? So they're looking around and going, hang on a minute. We've like I've grown up with black people. I've grown up with Indians, right? Which I did as well. I've grown up with these people. I don't have a problem with them, my friends. And there's a bunch of Sikhs out there going, hang on a minute, like we got to stop these people coming in because this is not good. And then all of a sudden they're told, you know what? You guys are racist. Well, hang on a second. My best friend's black. Hang on a second. Like I've grown up, and they're not. I mean, I know that about the UK. I grew up there. Of course, there will always be racists. I've said it before. You're never going to legislate racism out of someone's heart. It's in them.
Nope.
By the way, and this stupid idea that says reverse racism. It's not reverse racism. By the way, let me tell you this. You want to see racism? Go to the Far East, right? Go to the Asian countries where the Chinese absolutely hate the Japanese hate the Chinese, the Koreans think they're all a bunch of idiots. I mean, it is the dynamic there is unbelievable. And so you get it everywhere. It's unfortunately a part of human nature, right? Unfortunately, it's a part of human nature. But what you cannot do is demonize someone for having legitimate concerns and then punish them even more. And I saw it over and over. And there's a reason why I'm getting to this, right? I saw it over and over and over where they were like, oh, this person said this. I was watching the cops, the police, dunk on arresting people for protesting. Meanwhile, I hate to say, Tim, there were mainly whites. It was mainly, and I'm like, hang on a minute. The whole point about these guys protesting is there's this two-tier justice system in the UK, and you guys just de-escalate, right? Even if they are responsible, de-escalate. You know this; it's a tactic, right? When you're going out there, you don't take riot shields, right? Take bikes and bike helmets, right? And you can use the bikes. This is a common tactic in policing, right? And what they did was they went, you know what? No, we're going to tool up. We're going to go out there. We're going to arrest all these white people who were complaining about being disenfranchised anyway, disenfranchising them even more. And what it does is it just pushes the animosity down. It doesn't get rid of it. It doesn't take it away. It doesn't make the situation better by becoming this, you know, these hardliners on one group, right? Because the majority of it was started because a lot of people as sexual deviants and rapists were walking free. These gangs were walking free. And there's a bunch of people going, hang on a minute. Why aren't you arresting that person? Why aren't you? Oh, you're racist. So let's put a pin in that. We've just seen it in Springfield, Ohio, right? We've seen in Springfield, Ohio, where they're saying they're actually cooking cats and they're cooking dogs. There's plenty of videos out there of them doing it. It's not like it's not like, oh, they're like, oh, somebody's crazy and making it up. No. And you've got guys coming out there. And by the way, black people are coming out and they're going, these people, I'm scared to walk at night, right? This is a teeny tiny town, right, of I think 60,000 people or 40,000 people, that they've had 20,000 people dropped on them. That changes the dynamic of your town. It cannot not do that. And by the way, this never works. It never works. You have to, and I know, and you know this, what I'm like about how much I love this country, right? What you have to do is you assimilate. You say, you know what? First thing, everyone has to speak English. You all have to speak English. If you cannot speak English on your citizen test, sorry, you can't come in. That's it, right? Because if you care enough, you will learn it, and then that makes you assimilate rather than ghettoize and go into separate areas. But the main thing is, Tim, is you got people that are going, hang on a minute, this is happening. And then the American people are being told, don't believe your lying eyes. None of this is happening. Trump wasn't shot. That wasn't a shot to his ear. You're like, what? We saw it live. A guy died. How dare you? A hero, an American hero, died in Butler, Pennsylvania. A family was robbed of their father. And I don't want to say it because it gets me so angry, is you're just going that it's fake, that he somehow set it up. Yeah. Did you see how the bullet went through and hit the hydraulic line and brought that cherry picker down? Right? Like it's unbelievable. And what it does is it makes people angry, right? It makes them angry and angry and angry. And then you see something again, right? And in a vacuum of media that doesn't tell the truth, people grasp for things. And this is why I wanted you to come on to talk about it, because you're a rational individual. I trust you implicitly, clearly. I know you're a good man. And I know you're conservative. I know you love Trump, but I know you put your life on the line to protect the president, whoever it was, right? Because of the larger implications to the Western world and the rest of the world. This is not a joke, right? It's not a joke.
Matt, as a young FBI agent with, I think I had, 6 or 7 kids at the time, sole source of income, the father to all those kids, husband to my wife, I was on Janet Reno's protective detail. And of all the attorney generals, I think in my lifetime, she's the one I probably disagreed with most vehemently on political issues. I mean, I disagreed with so many things she did as the attorney general of the United States. Up to and including, what happened in Waco and other places. I did not like her politics. I was willing to lay down my life for her. Every day I worked on her detail. I was friendly to her and she was friendly to me. We had a professional relationship. I would come into work. She would say, "Hi, Tim, how's your family?" We would talk. And I didn't like her politics. Her politics were not in any way related to my job and my relationship with her. That was my job. I had to protect Janet Reno because she was Attorney General and I was an FBI agent that was on her detail for a while. And so that's the way it was. It's not like that anymore. I think there are sincerely people in the Secret Service that dislike Trump, say, I will never be on his detail. I don't care if he dies. And I think there are many people within the federal government and other entities that say the same thing. I mean, some of the concerns I have as a former FBI agent is the politics of, the FBI special agent in charge that's responsible for this investigation. Where's his politics and how does it affect what he's doing? The U.S. attorneys down in Florida for the same reason. And, the problem is people are not able to segregate. They can't segregate. And I don't mean segregate in a racial way. I mean segregate different aspects of their life. Great movie that's out right now, I don't know if you've seen it, is Reagan. It's the story of Ronald Reagan, and it's not a high budget Hollywood film. It's moderate to low budget, but Dennis Quaid is phenomenal as Ronald Reagan. It's a great movie. Penelope Ann Miller is great as Mrs. Reagan. And the thing it tells you is how inspiring Ronald Reagan was as a person. And Ronald Reagan got along with Tip O'Neill. They were political opposites. And he said, look, there's a 6 o'clock every day. And Tip O'Neill said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, we're political opponents, but at 6 o'clock, the political day ends and we're just two Irish guys. So they would get together and have drinks. But they separated their politics. And some people today say, oh, that's horrible. It's like shaking hands with Hitler. No, it's really not, because no politician in America is Adolf Hitler. No, none are. I dislike Joe Biden in a million different ways. If I had to work with him, that was my responsibility, I would do it. I still dislike his politics, and I would work every minute I could where I was allowed to against his reelection. And I would work against Kamala Harris's reelection for the same reasons. But it doesn't mean that Janet Reno and I can't communicate as human beings and work together, and me literally be willing to lay down my life for her. It doesn't mean that, but it does mean that today for too many people. And it's sad.
Can I just say, Tim, the other thing is as well, I think even if you go back 20 years, people genuinely wanted what was best for the country. And I can't help but think, and I'd love to hear what people have to say about this on this thread. I can't help but think that people are just trying to get out of the country what they can, right? What is it?
Rather than
do
put
not
in
ask
what they can.
Do not ask
ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
And it's just not like that now. It's just absolutely not like that. And I think that part of the frustration, I mean, certainly with the clear insider trading in Congress, where they, all of a sudden are the greatest minds. If I was as good at picking stocks as they are, why would you ever go into Congress, right? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Exactly. Well, it's how they, on $144,000 salary, make tens of millions.
Well, hundreds of millions, some of them. And I think that, what happens is you get in there and you're a young, maybe idealistic congressman on either side, and they're like, hey, listen, do you want to make $10 million? And then they go, that's more money than I ever saw. And they're like, yeah, listen, nobody's going to care about you anyway once you're gone. Like, you got 4 years, nobody's going to give a damn. And I think that, again, this is why I keep asking people I need to subscribe to my channel, right? Because then you guys are the boss. It's the way it should be. They don't think that you're the boss. They get in and they're like, I'm going to milk this for whatever I can. So I do think there's been a fundamental change in that, in the sense that people are going, I'm going to take what I can while I'm here, and I'm running off like a bandit. There's a few, like I think Rand Paul has been like steadfast. I think Massey has been steadfast. I mean, Mike Lee is great. There's a few people out there. Now your governor is excellent. Our attorney general here is off the hook, brilliant. And again, they tried to get rid of him, right? They're trying to push him out. So we're really in uncharted territory, in the sense that we don't have people working for us anymore. And I think that a lot of people see that and they're like, you know what? The reason why they don't want people going off and having a beer together is because they think it's the uniparty. And they're right. It is the uniparty, because nobody's really looking for us.
It really is, Matt. But still, behind that is human beings, and we have to look at each other. I said this. I was on CNN on Sunday night after the assassination attempt with Aaron Burnett, and I said it to her. I said, and people were shocked that I said it on CNN. But I said, look, you and I might disagree on 50% of what's important to us politically, but it doesn't mean we can't be friends, relatives, neighbors, and get along and have discussions and have dialogue. I love debating people that I disagree with. I mean, you and I, we don't talk about politics a lot because we agree on pretty much 100%.
Yeah.
So it'd be a very boring conversation. You'd say it, I'd say it, and we'd be done.
Yeah.
Whereas if you and I disagreed and we could have a debate, an actual dialogue, it's interesting and it's challenging. And I love being challenged.
But you do that with your brother all the time. You know, I've been there.
I do it with a lot of people all the time.
Yeah.
But you know, in the Reagan movie, I'm going to go back to that. He's being rolled into surgery, and this is an actual event that actually happened. He was shot, and his life was in danger because the bullet flattened along the body of the car, went in through the gap of the hinge of the armored vehicle, and then slid in between his ribs and went into his lung. And so he's coughing up blood. It's frothy blood, which means it's a lung injury. So it was a life-threatening injury. And he's being rolled into the operating room. All the doctors and nurses are looking down at him, and he looks up at them and says, "Please tell me you're all Republicans." and the doctor said back to him, "We're all Republicans today, Mr. President." So
Amazing.
That harkens back.
Amazing.
That's what, 1981, I think, was that assassination attempt. And the Democrat doctors probably would have said that back then. Today, today there are Democrat doctors that would say, "I'm not operating on him," and there are Republican doctors that might say the same thing if it was Joe Biden, and that's horrible.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't actually think that's the case the other way. Unfortunately, in the same way,
but there might be some.
There might be some, but I think. I mean, look, you know, you have purists on either side. Like, you know, we can. I mean, there's this whole thing about Trump and IVF and all that, and you know, we're Catholics. You know, JD Vance is Catholic, and I just think that, you know, the pearl clutching on that and on abortion for Trump is just unbelievable. Like that,
it's ridiculous, suicidal.
It is unbelievable, and there are some very, very prominent YouTubers that get paid a lot of money to go and talk about these things that are just. It's like they're fiddling while Rome is burning, right? I mean, it is utterly unbelievable. And again, Tim, look,
don't vote for Donald Trump because he might not go with the exact prescription you want on abortion right now, but let the country burn down to ruins, and you can feel comfortable that at least I didn't vote for the guy that might have saved my nation because he might not have done 100% of what I wanted on pro-life. And I'm 100% pro-life. I just happen to be a human being that's a realist and understands Donald Trump might not be me. He might not be the guy that will be our next pope, but it doesn't mean that we don't want him to be our next president.
And we'd really like another pope. But anyway,
but not Donald Trump.
But not Donald Trump. But I do want to say this, and this is something that I've tried to put across multiple times to people, and they don't get it because it drives me bonkers. And I've got some trolls out there, so I'm going to ask the people that are watching to go after the trolls for me because it does my head in. And I am a little bit of a counterpuncher, right? I know if someone pushes me, I'll punch him back because I hate bullies, and they normally go after people that aren't willing or not able to fight back. So here's the thing, and I keep saying this. I love Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis is fantastic, right? We all love him. He's the best governor. Tim might disagree with me, but I think he's the best governor.
Disagree. I would say
America.
He's in the top two. He's in the top two.
All right. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know. I take your word for it. He's great. But
Greg Gianforte, great governor.
Right. But here's the thing. He didn't win the primary, right? Mm-hmm. That's it. Nothing else matters. This is the process. Yeah. We can't complain and go, oh, well, look at the left. They're complaining that they won the popular vote. And we go, well, it's the electoral college for a reason, guys. And then you're going on about DeSantis. Now, DeSantis would win this. It doesn't matter because that's not the process. And by the way, and I do want to say this to the people here, is that we know, right, at that point, there was a point where it was like, is it Trump or is it DeSantis? Is it Trump? Is it DeSantis? I'm not sure. And I know we had this discussion, and I've had discussions with other prominent talk show people, Republicans, and they were like, oh, it's going to be DeSantis. I was like, I don't know. And we were like this, right? And then his campaign utterly imploded. It just did.
And
It's
Matt, it
sorry, go on.
imploded because of the people he surrounded himself with. Sadly, there were
100%.
too many political swamp dwellers that were just like Trump in his first term, had too many political swamp dwellers around him. So did DeSantis, and I think DeSantis hopefully learned from that. And I believe he will be a phenomenal president when he's elected president, and he will be. I sincerely believe. If not
Trump
2028,
wins.
yeah. Well, if Trump wins, if not, it's probably meaningless. But in 2028 or whether it's 2036, there's going to come a time where Ron DeSantis is the man, and maybe Florida needs him for another. How many more terms can he do? I don't know what the limits are in Florida, but
I don't know.
Maybe Florida needs him, and maybe because there's a possibility Florida turns purple and possibly blue in the near future, and maybe Ron DeSantis prevents that from happening, and we keep that great state on the right side. He's been a great governor. He's been a great governor, but unfortunately, his political campaign for president wasn't as great as his capability as an elected leader.
And I want to tell people this, right? I want to tell people watching that don't know, because I've seen underneath, like, you and I know Hollywood back to front, right? But it's been relatively new for me to see under the curtain, behind the curtain of politics. You wouldn't believe it. Like, you wouldn't believe how incompetent some people are, right? You wouldn't believe it. And how people come in and they go, oh yeah, we know this, we know that. And then they just destroy a campaign. And then they'll get hired again because they're on that campaign. When you look at someone like DeSantis was the guy, right? He did it all by himself originally. It was him and his wife, who's amazing, right? And he did it all by himself. That he's the real deal. I mean, you saw it, by the way. He dismantled probably the most gifted debater on the left, which is Gavin Newsom, right? You might hate him, but he's slick and he's slimy, but he's very good. And DeSantis destroyed him. I was actually worried about it. I was worried, not because DeSantis isn't smart, right? He's super smart, right? But it's just he's going up against someone who just lies all the time. And he did, but DeSantis just dismantled him in the same way that Tulsi Gabbard dismantled Kamala Harris, right? Like these people are experts at what they do. But the fact is he had people come in and they destroyed his campaign. They literally destroyed his campaign. And you know what? I was told, don't say that because you'll never be involved with them. And I said, I don't want to be involved with them if they're not going to listen to the truth, because I want to win. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And I want him to win. Right. And you know this, Tim, it's the same. I don't know what's going on with Trump, but Trump was running a horrible campaign this time around. Horrible.
Yeah. Well, Trump's not a great campaigner and he's not a great debater. He's a good leader when he gets into a position, but he's a terrible campaigner, horrible campaigner. He's a horrible debater. He's a horrible lecturer. He gives fun speeches. I've seen him live, met him at an event, and then saw him recently at an event here. He gives fun speeches, but he's very redundant. He's not Ronald Reagan. He's not even Ron DeSantis when it comes to those things. But at the same time, I want him in the White House pushing for the things that matter to me. And it won't be 100% of the things that matter to me, and it won't be 100% of the things that matter to you. It'll be 100% of the things that matter to him. And I agree with about 80 or 85% of the things that matter to him. So that's how you're supposed to elect a candidate. You're not supposed to say, well, this guy's off on 10%, so I can't vote for him. So I'm going to let the other person win that I disagree with on 95% or 99%.
This absurd kind of thing like, oh, I'm principled. Right, you're principled. That you're going to give it to the other side. Like, you are literally going to give to the other side. That is, to me, unconscionable. I think that people who are doing that, they're not living. They're not living a real life. They're not going. They're certainly like, I'll tell you this: with 7 kids at home right now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm bleeding money every single week in food. And they'll say, no. It's not. I mean, just on that alone. And then I'll tell you this right now. To all the DeSantis supporters, now I've said it 1,000 times. I know you don't like to hear it, right? And you're going, oh, Trump won the nomination, right? he's our candidate. That's it. That's all that matters. People say, oh, well, you're voting for him regardless. Against Satan,
Yeah.
yes, I am.
Don't say that. No, against a person who worships Satan, I'll go with. But
Okay,
Matt,
all right.
Let me sideline you here for a second. I have a degree in political science from Fordham University in New York. At the time, one of the top political science departments in the world. I think the London School of Politics and Economics was number one, and Fordham was one of the number one or two in the United States. And I don't credit you because you didn't go there. But so there was something called the Gutman Continuum. And I remember this from whatever it was, 40 years ago when I studied at Fordham. And the Gutman Continuum is how you should pick a political candidate. And it's on an individual basis. You take the top 10 things that matter to you. I don't care what they are. Abortion matters to abortion rights advocates. Hopefully, it's not the only thing that matters. National security, Second Amendment rights, the border, healthcare, the inflation and the cost of eggs and bread. All of those things should matter to you. You know, where we stand when it comes to our own energy. Whether we're going to buy oil from Saudi Arabia or we're going to drill and frack and do other things here. The climate crisis, all of these things. So pick the 10 things that matter the most to you. Then on that 10 things, have 10 scores, okay? And pick where, so in 1 through 10, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, where they stand on each of those 10 things. So Kamala on energy, maybe she gets a 3 or a 4 now because she's talking about allowing fracking again. She would have gotten a 0.
Talking about it. But I'm saying this, just look at the reality of what it is today. She would have gotten a 0 from me in 2019. Maybe she gets a 4 now. Donald Trump, I give a 9 or a 10 to on that. Abortion, Kamala Harris, a big 0. Donald Trump, maybe he's a 7 or an 8 now. Whereas as president before, he would have been in a 9 or a 10 category to me because of what he did on the pro-life cause. So maybe he's dropped down a couple of notches. So now he's a 7. National security, Kamala Harris, the debacle, withdrawal from Afghanistan and other things. We have no deployed security personnel in a war zone anywhere in the world. That's a lie. So again, I'll give her a 1 just to get her on the scale. And I'll give Donald Trump saying to mullah whatever in the Taliban, here's a picture of your house. I know where you live, and you won't be living there, and you won't be living if you touch the hair on the head of another human being. So I'm going to give Donald Trump, I'm going to reduce it a little bit and only give him an 8. Okay? So now I'm going across the scale. Climate change, Kamala Harris 0, Donald Trump 10. Whatever it is. So now I go down the line and I objectively look at all of the 10 things that matter to me, Tim Clemente. Only me. I'm only thinking about myself at this moment. What do I want? What do I believe? What do I believe in? And then I'm going to scale them. Get to the 10th thing, whatever it is. That's the least important of my 10 things. You know, that's what does he care about? How does he feel about cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio? And so Kamala Harris, I'll give it a 5, and I'll give Donald Trump a 5. They both care the same amount about cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. So now I have a scale. I total it up to the bottom, and at the bottom, Donald Trump gets an 82 and Kamala Harris gets a 12. I now know who I'm going to vote for. Yeah.
And so because I have that scale, it's totally objective now. It's totally objective. There's no subjectivity to it. It's objective observations of what they've said, what they've pledged to do, and what they have done in the past based on the 10 most important things to me as a voter. And now I pick. And that's what I would plead with every American to do. Don't look at Donald Trump, the tweeter. Unless Donald Trump's tweets or tweets in general are in the top 10 most important things for you, don't consider it. His speeches, his debate skills, if that's one of the 10 most important things, include it and rate him on it versus Kamala, unburdened by what has been, unburdened by what has been, unburdened by what has been. Unless that kind of, brilliance, it matters to you, scale her higher than Trump, fine. But you have to pick the 10 issues that matter to you, rate them on a 1 to 10 scale on each of those 10 issues, and pick the candidate that way. You can't pick them by, I hate his orange hair, I don't like his fake tan, I don't like her fake accents. You can't do it that way.
You wouldn't do that with a surgeon, would you? You wouldn't do that with a
No,
surgeon. You wouldn't go, "Oh, I don't like the
absolutely.
shoes he's wearing, so I'm not going to." Or he did a bad tweet.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Are you the best surgeon in the world to fix my problem?" And
Yep.
let me just say this, Tim. There's another thing. And then I'm going to ask you to do something. I don't know if you'll do it. I don't know if you'll reveal this, but I know you're thinking, "Uh-oh." So it is bizarre to me that this is even close, like, because things are
Hmm.
so bad, like things are so horrendously bad. I mean, I'm talking to people daily and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, my car payments have gone up, my insurance has gone up, my electricity's gone up, and all. It's just so bad, and
Yeah.
everyone's feeling it, apart from the people that don't have to worry about that, which are mainly the people that they're importing into the country.
Hmm.
That's another question altogether. But it's a statement is, I don't understand how people are, why it's even close, right? The amount of things. If you think of the Afghanistan withdrawal in a normal political environment, that would have been the end.
Yep.
Like, that would
Should
have
have
been
been.
it. It would have been over. Secondly, going on to an attempt on the president's life. That would have been, he would have won. That's it. There wouldn't have been another question about it,
Yeah.
right? I could go on and on and on about the things that they have done on the left that have been so bad that we should be winning by 10 million votes, right? I mean, like, just massive numbers. But I don't know what is going on. I don't know whether it's gaslighting for social media. I certainly think there's a little bit of that. But this shouldn't be close. But I'm going to say it again. You guys have to be engaged, right? You have to, with things like this. You like these conversations. We're independent, right? We are not a part of any other bigger organization, right? Nobody's telling me what to say or what to do on this. But you guys write down there what you want to see. You guys put down in the messages what you want me to ask, the questions I want to ask. I'll get Tim back on again. He's got an absolute, like, glittering career, and he's one of the people like me, where we've had the craziest things happen to us in our lives that you really would not believe. And so, talking about that, I'm going to end now because, Trevor Colt said to me, Matt, your video's going too long. I went, I promise you, I'm not going to do too long. We've been nearly 2 hours. So I do want to ask you this. Can you tell the Michael Jackson story?
Thanks, Matt. Great talking to you.
All right, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Okay. All right. So when 9/11 happened again, I was at the Pentagon, and a few weeks after, in October of 2001, there were two big concerts that were going to be held. One by Paul McCartney in New York, and Paul McCartney was the headliner who was arranging all the other acts, and there was a couple of dozen acts, and then and that was being done in New York to raise money for survivors and for first responders at the World Trade Center. And then there was a United We Stand concert that was set up in Washington, D.C. at RFK Stadium. And Michael Jackson was the headliner, the main headliner, and there were dozens of other acts: Train, Aerosmith, P. Diddy, who his name is in the news today, and rappers, artists of all different types. And it was going to be a big concert. And so I was the special events coordinator for the FBI in Washington, D.C., which meant that I handled every type of special event for about a 6-year period, including every political event, every entertainment venue, and every sporting event. So I was responsible for counterterrorism preparation, security, and response, and what's called crisis and consequence management. And so I got 75 FBI agents assigned for this special event, for this concert. And we were there to protect the attendees and the performers. And there's other security personnel. There's Metropolitan Police Department personnel. There's uniformed security. And so what we had to do was take these 75 FBI agents, and I had to assign them to protect all the different acts coming into the venue, because what we determined was there's really no way to secure the venue and then have buses come in with, Aerosmith comes in on their tour bus, drives right into the stadium. They jump out, their roadies set their equipment up on stage, they perform and get back out, because almost anything can be concealed on that bus. And rather than have a black backlog at the entry point where, Aerosmith's bus drives in, and now we have to take everything off that bus, search every container of every variety, small and large, for anything that might cause harm to anyone in that stadium, it would have taken way too long, been a huge backlog, and it would have been just a goat rope. And so instead, I decided, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these agents, and I'm going to assign 2 agents to each of the different acts. And you're going to spend the entire day with that act, with them, going through all of their personal belongings, all of their stage equipment, everything, going through their bus, searching it. And then, like I said before, searching it, advancing it, and then securing it. And so, for instance, there was 2 female FBI agents that were like, ooh, can we take Aerosmith? And so I said, sure, you can have Aerosmith. So they go out, they go to Aerosmith's hotel early that morning. They're performing that night. They spend about 10 or 12 hours with the band going through everything. Nothing gets on that bus. Nothing comes into that stadium that wasn't searched by these 2 FBI agents. And so they spend the whole day with Aerosmith, got along great, went in with them, got on stage with them, everything. So we have all these acts, and I can't remember all the names, but somebody was assigned to all of them, except nobody volunteered to be with Michael Jackson. So I don't know. There were a lot of accusations about Michael back at the time. Yeah. And so since I was the one ultimately responsible, I said, all right, come on, do I have to assign somebody or take it myself? And it became down to I have to take it myself. So Michael Jackson rented a house in Arlington, Virginia for this event, came in a day early with his 2 little kids at the time, Paris and I don't remember the other kid's name.
Was it Blanket?
No, Blanket's the nickname because they covered him with a blanket and he was holding him up on the whatever the
yeah, I'll never forget that when he did that.
Yeah,
that was kind of like
on the balcony. So I ended up that morning, I'm at the venue, and then I got to go to Michael Jackson's house. So I go there in the morning and I say, all right, Michael, here's the deal. I need to go through all your stuff. Nothing comes into that venue that I haven't seen, that I haven't inspected, and that I haven't secured. So Michael has his own limo bus that he's going to take into the venue. And he's got all his bags that are packed, or he's packing bags, all the equipment, sound equipment, anything that he might have had, I had to inspect. And I came in the house and I was explaining this all to him. And then just then his 2 little kids come down the stairs, and he was trying to get them ready. All right, you have to pack your stuff, get your bag. We're going to go to the stadium in a little while. This nice man, Tim, is going to go with us. And then he sits down at a piano and he plays a song that is exactly what he just said to his kids. And he's telling them to get ready. You have to pack your bag.
I want the impression.
Nice man, Tim.
I want the impression that you do of him. Come on now. Come on. I want the impression.
I can't get my voice high enough.
Tim, Mr. Tim is here. Pack your bags.
He's going to check all our bags. He's very nice. We will. And he plays the piano and sings a song to these 2 little kids. And then they go running up the stairs to get their stuff. And they come down with these little like fuzzy animal backpacks that they wanted me to inspect, because in the song he told them, Mr. Tim will inspect your bags. And so they come down. But I tell you what, he was a really nice guy. I mean, very, very shy, apprehensive, but he was a nice guy. I mean, he's obviously very odd, but seemed like a decent guy to me, and treated his kids well. And the guy's a performer, man. The guy sits down at the piano and makes up a song instantaneously and sings it to his kids, and it could have been a top 40 hit.
And the interesting thing is that when you went there, every single act wanted to meet him, right? Like,
so
everyone.
on the way to the stadium, we had to go directly by the Pentagon, and this is 3 weeks or so, maybe sometime around mid-October, 3 to 5 weeks after the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon. And so I took Michael there, and what's his name from Home Alone, the actor?
Macaulay Culkin,
the kid. Macaulay Culkin was with us too. So Macaulay came over in the afternoon to Michael's house, met him, searched all his stuff, and he was going to go to the concert with us. So he got in the van, and Michael had his own driver, and I was in the co-pilot seat. We went to the Pentagon. I took him there, gave him a quick tour, explained everything that happened. He asked a lot of very good, detailed questions about what happened. How do we prevent it from happening again? And then we went to the venue, and when we got to the venue, we were worried about fans. Obviously, you have 50 plus thousand fans going into this stadium, traffic all around the stadium. So we had, unlike the Secret Service, the FBI, we have good communication. So we're communicating with every local jurisdiction. So as we're moving towards the stadium, I'm talking to the Metropolitan Police Department, Virginia State Police, Arlington PD, everybody, so that we have smooth sailing to get there without. What we don't want is people to realize this is Michael Jackson in this vehicle, traffic jam, swarm the van, turn into an ugly situation. And we want to be able to get into the venue very quickly. And so I'm communicating with my guys that are at the venue. Okay, clear the way. Michael Jackson's coming. We're coming down this route. This is where we're going to enter the property. This is where we're going into the stadium. I want this exit opened, have the gates open, wave us right through. We got an Arlington PD car in front of us. We got a state police car behind us. They're not going to go into the venue. They're going to break off once we get into the venue. We're going to go in and we're going to drive right through the underside of the stadium directly to Michael's dressing room. So we do that. We get him in. I get him into his dressing room. He gets ready. The concert begins. I got to go up on stage to make sure everything's good. So I'm making sure P. Diddy's got what he needs going on stage. I'm with MC Hammer downstairs, getting him ready, going in.
Sorry, MC Hammer reference.
And when I bring Michael Jackson in, and we get ambushed. Everybody. Mariah Carey is like a big fangirl. She's trying to attack him. She wants to get close and give him a kiss. And it terrified Michael because now all of a sudden 100 people swarm him. And I had gotten a couple of buddies of mine.
All the stars, right? All the
stars, the actors, yeah. And I expected this from 13-year-old girls, not from professionals that are equally as well known as he is. But they all wanted to be with Michael, get a picture with Michael, see Michael, kiss him, hug him. And I had asked a few buddies of mine to come and join us on this day. And they were all, 2 or 3 of them were from the actual president's protective detail at that time, George W. Bush's detail. They were Secret Service agents. They were the most elite of the elite. And these were guys that knew what they were doing. So I said, hey guys, can you come over to the stadium? I got Michael Jackson and I got to protect him. And so they came over. We set up that diamond perimeter around Michael Jackson, and everywhere we had to move him on, because he had to go on stage multiple different times, we had to keep him safe from the other acts, from all these famous performers, from just, he was terrified because he was like, he's very apprehensive and he's nervous, and all these people are swarming him at the same time, screaming, Michael, Michael, Michael. And I was like, I would expect this of 13-year-old girls at a Taylor Swift concert. I didn't expect it of these people at a Michael Jackson thing. But
yeah,
all in all, and then I took him back to the house at the end of the night, and very great guy. He sent me a bunch of autographed pictures of him, and I haven't displayed those in a while, but I still have them. Anyway, so it's Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I just think that story is fascinating. So, we're 2 hours in, guys. So I'm going to thank you for joining us, for listening to what Tim has to say. This is just like a teeny tiny sliver of the stories that Tim has. So I'll bring him back again. I'll kidnap him. I've been trying to get him on for some time. His stories about St. Louis, Missouri are unbelievable. Stories in Africa, unbelievable. Iraq, unbelievable. These things are, the stories are great. He's a terrific screenwriter. He's a good friend. So I want to thank everyone for coming. Tell your friends, get them to subscribe. And thank you very much, Tim, for coming. And we'll have you back again.